what inspired you to pursue learning and then going on to teach rhetoric? And I know you got a degree in philosophy of communication. So,
Mhm.
I mean, what brought you to this point?
Um, so I really didn't care about rhetoric, at all. Um, for me, it was, I was reading a book, probably around 2013 to 15, sometime in that time frame, called Lost in the Cosmos by a Catholic novelist and philosopher, Walker Percy. And, I got my undergraduate degrees in computer science and Spanish, very practical, at least computer science, and Spanish, of course, is great. It's very, very helpful depending on the context you're in. Um, and Percy, in the middle of his book, has this thing called, he started talking about semiotics. So I was living in Pittsburgh at the time. I typed in semiotics, and that brought up a faculty member's page at Duquesne University. I ended up contacting the guy. He forwarded my email to somebody else. Went on campus there, and I was so jazzed about semiotics, which is very very sort of technical, or can be technical. Percy doesn't make it too technical. Investigation into signs and symbols and how they work. And, I just said to the guy, "Hey, I wanna get my PhD." And he's like, "Well, you gotta get your master's first." So I was like, "Alright, that's fine. I'll do that." And, the program was Rhetoric and Philosophy of Communication, and I had no idea at the time, but these people were incredibly intelligent and smart, and, Rhetoric was a sort of surprise find along the way. I was really more interested in signs and symbols, because Percy set me on that road.
Okay, um, you do teach at Ave Maria University,
Mhm.
and in knowing you, I know you. I don't want to inflate your ego here, but you are one of the best practicing Catholics I think I know across the
Mhm.
board. So could you share a bit about your journey in the faith as well, on the other side of your education and your faith? How did you get to where you're at now?
Uh, well, first of all, I'm very humbled by that. I don't know. I don't necessarily think that's the case. That's kinda how I feel about my wife. Um, and, yeah, I just feel like I have a long way to go. I just started doing the, little office of the Blessed Virgin Mary, to try and pray more, because, of course, there's so many different things you could try. But yeah, I mean, I converted to Catholicism in 2014, um, and, it was in the Pittsburgh diocese. The oratorians there were great. And, yeah, I tried all I mean, I was raised, nominally a Lutheran. My parents would take us to church, um, you know, um, baptized, into the Lutheran church there. But then when I got into high school and college, I got kinda went off the rails there and started looking into things like, Buddhism and Eastern religions, which people always laugh at, trying to imagine me as a Buddhist. It wasn't like a real Buddhist type thing, like putting on my orange robe and shaving my head and whatnot, sitting there in the lotus position. It was more like this sort of cultural Buddhism of the 60s. There's Jack Kerouac and the Allen Ginsberg types. And the first book on philosophy I actually ever read was after I had my wisdom teeth out. I probably never told you this story. Just imagine me with my mouth filled with gauze and, sitting in my one, parents' room where they had, the piano, first floor of their house, in a rocking chair, with my teeth filled with gauze. And, it was Robert Pirsig's Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Somebody gave me this book. And, yeah, he just started doing philosophy. I was like, "This is really strange," but also kinda literature. It was like a philosophy, literature type combination, and that really kinda piqued my interest, in philosophy. Um
So in losing your wisdom teeth, you began to find real
Look, man,
wisdom.
wisdom is all about irony. This is the essence of the sort of Socratic know thyself. Socrates wandering around going, I don't know, I'm an idiot. And making people look like idiots as he himself was claiming to be an idiot. Um, so, yeah.
I do want to dive into the intersection of faith and language,
Hmm.
because I think, at the heart of communication, the heart of rhetoric is language. But first, just one more thing about you personally. How does your faith that you now have, how does that enhance your ability to both understand and teach rhetoric and communication?
Um, Well, it has to be the beginning and the end. Uh, where you start your inquiry and where you end. Um, Sets the guidelines or the boundaries from which you can run and run pretty free. When I was converting Catholicism, I read Chesterton, and I was really inspired by how hilarious and intelligent he was. And for me, you know, the life of the mind, trying to be a scholar, trying to write, trying to read, you really have to have a certain humility, which I don't necessarily claim to have. But you have to begin your inquiries with humility and try and end with humility. And eventually you have to reach a point where you say, "I don't know." And I think the faith helps you get there. The faith helps preserve mystery, and at root, language is very mysterious. It's a very, very mysterious thing, to the point where if you don't have the faith, and you're a postmodernist, you start talking about language with a capital L, which is their word for God. Wherein the language speaks the subject. I think it may have been Michel Foucault, who said this. Some postmodernist said this, but essentially, language itself becomes animated in a way. Language is not just a tool. We could talk more about that at a certain point in time if you want. And the postmodernists actually are helpful in a certain regard in calling that out, a sort of instrumental view of language. But without the faith, if you begin to look into the mysteries of language and the extraordinary power of language to shape consciousness, perception, social groups, it's everywhere, written and spoken. It can become a god. Anything that you're studying can really become a god, because in a way you have to serve. Well, you have to follow the conversation. I had a professor who used to say you have to follow the dialectic. When you're in class, students are asking questions, you follow the dialectic. You see where the conversation is going. And it's the same way in inquiry. You just got to make sure you don't follow the dialectic off the edge of a cliff.
This interesting you say this. I think that their perversion of language as a god
Mm-hmm.
is it's a bit like the Black Mass, showing the reality of the true Mass.
Mm-hmm.
The Black Mass of Satanists is what I'm referring to. Because I wanted to read some biblical quotes here.
Okay.
So first with Genesis. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light,
Mm-hmm.
and so on. So right very beginning of the biblical narrative, we have God speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, each stage of creation is spoken into existence.
Mm-hmm.
And then moving on to John, when he says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God."
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you make of God in proper terms being equated or identified as the Word? What is the Word? And maybe why is that different from the language that the modern culture uses? Thank you so much for your time and for listening and or watching. I hope that you found it fruitful, and if you did, I encourage you to share it with others. And if you feel called, I just ask that you like this, that you subscribe or follow, and finally that you support this in one way or another, be that just a simple prayer or monetarily, of course, helps me to continue to make these. Until next time, thank you again. God bless.